that is developing a good test-taking skill.
Isn't that exciting to see students when you as a volunteer, you walk in and you kind of have this image, this judgment about the students. And you know going in that they're not the most academically successful kids. But when you sit down with them and you tell them, look, you can do this. You just need to focus. Let me show you. Why don't you move on to number 2? And then they get it done, they move on to number 3. It's really exciting to know that you can see change happen before your very eyes. You know, that kind of feeling is something that I want to cultivate. And that kind of energy is here in St. Paul. It just needs to be harnessed. It needs to be focused. There needs to be some kind of coordination so we can tap the energy that these volunteers need to see with the ambition of the students. And, you know, great results happen. It's truly amazing.
That coordination thing is actually where I wanted to go next. I wanted to get you to, like, just with your hands do a diagram of the whole AmeriCorps system. It's nationwide, and there's subsets within states, and within states there are different programs, and education is a subset of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so AmeriCorps is a government-run program through the National Corporation of the Corporation of National and Community Service. And AmeriCorps is broken up into different subcategories. And in particular, my category is AmeriCorps State. AmeriCorps State then branches out into 50 different parent fiscal agents. Mm-hmm. And within those fiscal agents are different organizations. So the organization in Minnesota is called Serve Minnesota. And then from Serve Minnesota is the Minnesota Alliance with Youth. And that is my parent organization. They host about 70 Promise Fellows. And as Promise Fellows, we work in the communities to help specifically education. There are a ton of organizations right here in the Twin Cities that work under AmeriCorps, but they focus on different issues. Mm-hmm. So one would focus on environmentalism, one could focus on homelessness. The Minnesota Alliance with Youth focuses on education. And from there, they help deploy workers to different sites, including Como Park Senior High School. And from there, you know, it's really about connecting different organizations outside of AmeriCorps. So for instance, one organization that I'm teaming up with is the Rockstar Supply Company. It is a volunteer recruiting organization. And so that I can bring in volunteers into Focus 9. That's kind of how it works out.
Now, in the pre-interview, I asked you if they're smoke jumpers, if they come in like an emergency squad. But tell us more about the Rockstar Supply Company.
The Rockstar Supply Company is a nonprofit here in the Twin Cities, and their goal is to increase educational outcomes. They want to raise grades and they want to raise test scores for our high schoolers. And they are willing to do that in any way they can. They're a bunch of artists and concerned community members who want to help our schools. And so right now we have about 200 pledged volunteers, and they also have deployed about 20 volunteers to the Focus 9 program. They are also working to partner with Gordon Parks High School, ALC, and they're looking to expand their programs into other schools in Minneapolis. So that's a great opportunity for anyone in the St. Paul community to volunteers to go and meet Rockstar Supply Company. We can maybe throw up that website. We throw up a lot of websites here for you. The previous one was up, AmeriCorps.gov. That'd be great. As I looked at the Rockstar Supply Company, a couple features jumped out at me right away. The first is that they have kind of the saturation style, that there are a lot of tutors in one classroom. It's just not kind of just one-on-one in little rooms. And the second is that, as I talked to them, I realized they have kind of a draw-in technique. Come on in, they've got they're working on developing a storefront, is that correct? And that has like foosball, come on in and get a little lesson in chemistry while you don't even know you're getting that kind of thing? Yeah, the Rockstar Supply Company is trying to come up with creative ways to create incentives for students to do well in school. So for instance, along with the saturation that you were talking about earlier, if a student participates in an after-school program and they do consistently well in their homework, they want to offer free recording studio time. But they also want to connect with kids and their interests. So for instance, if John, you were tutoring in Focus 9 and you and Charlie were talking, and Charlie brought up that over the weekend he wrote a poem, then you'd be like, oh, great, let me read the poem. And you could realize that Charlie has kind of an interest with poetry. From there, you can hopefully, from the connections with Rockstar Supply Company, hook Charlie up with a poet, a local poet in the Twin Cities. That way we can cultivate his interests and get him to realize that homework can lead to other really fun and exciting things. That isn't just getting A's or B's, it's really engaging in what they like. That's kind of the approach that that Rockstar Supply Company wants to take.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Tim Lee, an AmeriCorps Promise Fellow, and we're talking about tutoring in the St. Paul public school system. Now, something about that metaphor of a smoke jumper stuck when I was talking to you, and I think it's because you came here from Oregon, and you picked a topic and an age and a location. Did you really survey the land? I mean, how did you just kind of like intuition said that's where I'm needed, and you dove in? Does this kind of thing work at the elementary level?
I think maybe it's one of those characteristics of AmeriCorps workers. We have an idea, we have some energy, and we just want to throw ourselves into the mix right away. I know specifically I chose St. Paul because of my connections when I was an undergrad. I had a very memorable time and exciting time in St. Paul, but I hadn't really explored the community. It was still comfortable yet exciting. And so I dove right in, and the only reason why I got into education is because I realized that I had knowledge in chemistry that could help other students and that I could teach it, and that's how I kind of got focused. I think it's one of those things where if you have a passion, if you have a lot of excitement and energy about something, you should totally dive in. I think that's a characteristic of all AmeriCorps workers. Certainly, especially at the wage we're getting paid, you gotta have that passion.
Right, yes. And it comes through in you so clearly. Now, you've been giving some speeches, and they've got a lot of energy in them.
Yeah, I recently we had a Q&A with Superintendent Valeria Silva, and we tried to have the community get involved and ask her some questions about how they felt about the state of our education system. And we also did it as a pitch to get more volunteers into our schools. That's kind of comes with the territory, and something I look forward to do.
Now, do you know the administrative part of that? I mean, they must certainly run statistics. Who comes in? How sticky are they when they come? Do they stay? Are there a lot of little nibblers who come and do a few and leave? Do you have a sense of that?
I actually don't. Are you talking about AmeriCorps workers?
Yeah, and tutoring in general.
I think retention was your question, right?
Yeah.
Retention is certainly...
It was all over the map,
It was all... Retention is certainly an issue with volunteers, I think. Burnout. But, as AmeriCorps workers, we only have to devote a year of service. And, if we're inspired to keep going, then, you'll stay another year. And that's not to say that we should belittle any amount of service that any AmeriCorps worker does. Every little thing that contributes to these great social problems that we face is certainly valuable. There's no diminishing that whatsoever. Having said that, we still need our community to be in it for the long haul. We need people to really commit themselves to a student. We need people to commit themselves to some kind of social service. That is, with such a high turnover, it's hard to make a lot of progress.